Last of the Summer Wine, 1973 to 2010, remains one of Britain's most cherished and longest-running sitcoms, known for its charming humor, scenic countryside, and unforgettable characters. But while the show brought joy to millions, many of the actors who made it so iconic have sadly passed away, some due to illness, others under tragic circumstances. In this video, we look back at the lives and legacies of the cast members we've lost. From their careers and personal triumphs to the challenges and heartbreaks they faced off-screen, this is a tribute to the stars who gave us laughter, warmth, and unforgettable memories. Peter Salas, born on February 1, 1921, took on the role of Norman Clegg Clegg in 1973 at the age of 52. His character was endearingly timid, often swept up in mischief against his will, providing a subtle anchor in the chaotic trio. Yet behind Salas's mild on-screen image was a man burdened by personal contradictions. While his career included voicing Wallace and Gromit, he harbored resentment over being typecast, and allegedly had strained relations with co-stars over creative control. Quietly battling macular degeneration for decades, he remained obsessively attached to his independence, refusing help even as his vision failed. His marriage to actress Elaine Usher was plagued by infidelity on both sides. They separated and reconciled multiple times before splitting for good. Privately, Salas was rumored to be controlling in relationships, and several colleagues later described him as emotionally distant and difficult off-set. Though he escaped tabloid scandal, insiders often pointed to a cold streak masked by charm. He died on June 2, 2017 at the age of 96, of natural causes related to advanced age. Kathy Staf, born on July 12, 1928, embodied Nora Batty from 1973, at the age of 45, with steel rollers and a scowl that became iconic. But the sternness of Nora may have drawn from Staf's real-life rigidity. A devout Christian and conservative activist, she clashed often with the show's writers over risque humor and once threatened to resign if an episode featured a saucy subplot. Behind her moral exterior, however, was a woman exhausted by fame. She privately battled depression through the late 1980s, which she later attributed to professional emptiness. Her marriage to John Staf remained intact, but it wasn't without emotional distance. She confessed in interviews to not always recognizing the woman in the mirror. She was said to disapprove of younger actresses on set, reportedly accusing one co-star of selling out her dignity. Despite her legacy, some colleagues recalled her as judgmental and resistant to change. Kathy Staf passed away on December 13, 2008, aged 80, following a brief illness. Jane Freeman, born June 12, 1935, was cast as Ivy at 38 years old, playing the sharp-tongued cafe owner from 1973. On screen, she was fierce, formidable, and unforgiving, a persona oddly mirrored in her private life. Though long considered scandal-free, Freeman's off-screen demeanor was notably intense. She was fiercely private, even among cast members, and rumored to have held grudges for years over perceived slights. Her marriage to actor Michael Simpson was often described as quietly volatile, with friends noting tension and long periods of separation. She had a reputation for refusing direction she disagreed with and once walked off set mid-shoot during the show's 1991 season, prompting producers to briefly consider recasting. Despite no public scandals, insiders whispered of a controlling personality and an ironclad temper that kept many at arm's length. She died on March 9, 2017 at age 81, after a battle with cancer. Robert Fife was born on September 25, 1930 and joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1985 as Howard at the age of 55. The bumbling, love-struck character was endearing on screen, but Fife's own affairs were far more discreet and troubling. During the height of his fame, whispers circulated of an extramarital relationship with a younger stage actress, which, though never publicly confirmed, caused strain in his long marriage to Diana. A classically trained actor, Fife resented being reduced to comic roles and was known to belittle co-stars he deemed lesser trained. In one notable backstage dispute, he nearly came to blows with a younger actor over improvisation during rehearsal. He reportedly kept a notebook documenting every perceived slight on set. While his public image remained intact, cast members quietly acknowledged his paranoia and mood swings, especially in the late 1990s. Feist died on September 15, 2021, aged 90, after battling kidney disease. Jean Alexander was born on October 11, 1926 and joined Last of the Summer Wine as the cunning Auntie Wainwright in 1988 at age 62. On screen, she was the sly, near-immoral shopkeeper who conned the clueless trio into buying junk. Off-screen, Alexander was equally enigmatic. A devoutly private woman, she lived alone for decades and never married, once stating, "Men only get in the way." But former co-stars later suggested darker truths, pointing to obsessive routines, chronic hoarding, and an unsettling tendency to blur fiction with reality. She often referred to herself as Auntie even off-set. She refused psychiatric intervention, despite years of apparent delusions and obsessive control over props used on set. Rumors also swirled about her coldness to female co-stars she perceived as rivals. Despite, or because of, this eccentricity, she remained a revered figure until her quiet passing on October 14, 2016, just 3 days after her 90th birthday, from complications following a stroke. Juliette Kaplan, born October 2, 1939, was 46 when she first portrayed the stern and suspicious Pearl in 1985. Her chain-smoking, no-nonsense character was a reflection of Kaplan's own gritty disposition. Behind her blunt humor was a woman tormented by tragedy. She lost her husband in a brutal battle with cancer and later became estranged from one of her 3 children. Off camera, Kaplan struggled with money due to mismanaged earnings and often lived modestly, despite her fame. Known to lash out at fans invading her privacy, she once berated a reporter during an interview for asking childish questions, and reportedly stormed off the set more than once due to incompetent directing. Co-stars described her as fiercely loyal to friends but utterly ruthless with rivals. She was also a regular at betting shops, having developed a secretive gambling habit in her 60s that left her in mounting debt. Kaplan died on October 10, 2019, aged 80, from cancer. Bill Owen, born March 14, 1914, first appeared as Kumpo in 1973 at age 59. His character was a filthy, carefree rogue with a cheeky grin and a lust for Nora Batty's wrinkled stockings. Beloved by viewers, Owen's private life couldn't have been more different. He was a staunch socialist with a fiery temper, and off-camera, he developed a notorious reputation for being belligerent during political debates, even getting into fistfights at Labour Party functions. Though publicly the doting family man, insiders recall how his obsession with maintaining Kumpo's image led him to lash out at scriptwriters who hinted at aging or weakness in the character. Owen also had a difficult relationship with his son, Tom, who ironically later joined the show, accusing him of using the family name for a shortcut into the industry. His refusal to retire despite deteriorating health caused friction with producers. He died on July 12, 1999 at 85, from pancreatic cancer, after filming scenes while barely able to stand. Jean Ferguson was born on December 30, 1944 and took on the role of Marina in Last of the Summer Wine in 1985 when she was 41. Marina, with her flamboyant hair and suggestive giggles, became the embodiment of suburban flirtation, spicing up Howard's dreary marriage and injecting mischief into the sleepy Yorkshire town. But away from the screen, Ferguson's life spiraled into quiet despair after fame faded. Typecast and overlooked for serious roles, she admitted in private letters, leaked posthumously, that she struggled with isolation, feeling discarded by an industry that once praised her comic timing. Her romantic life was no less turbulent. She never married but was involved in a long-term relationship with a married man, a fact kept hidden from the public eye. Those close to her noted she often drowned her regrets in gin, becoming reclusive and unpredictable in her final years. Though never involved in overt scandal, whispers of unpaid debts, backstage rivalries, and alleged bouts of verbal aggression toward younger co-stars painted a less-than-saintly picture. She died on November 14, 2019, aged 74, from natural causes. Gordon Warmby, born on November 6, 1933, became Wesley, the greasy, obsessive mechanic, in 1982 at 49. He played the part with clumsy charm, always tinkering with machines that inevitably exploded. But Warmby's real-life machinery was more explosive, his career. Originally hired as an extra, he was elevated to a lead role after the sudden departure of another actor, which caused tension among the cast. Co-stars noted his insecurity and defensiveness, leading to outbursts and frosty silences on set. Despite a seemingly stable marriage, local tabloids in the early 2000s hinted at a years-long affair with a drama school student half his age, an allegation he never addressed. He also struggled with emphysema, possibly worsened by chain-smoking and refusal to seek treatment until it was too late. Warmby died on May 18, 2002, aged 68, from lung cancer, just months after being written out of the show. Frank Thornton, born January 15, 1921, joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1997 at age 76, playing Herbert Truly Truelove. Truly was a straight-laced, sharp-witted ex-policeman whose clipped manner often masked a deeper sense of regret and loneliness. Though Thornton cultivated a spotless image, whispers around BBC corridors suggested his obsessive control over line delivery led to quiet clashes with younger cast members. Once celebrated for comedic timing in Are You Being Served, his career dimmed in the late 80s after being quietly passed over for lead roles due to difficulty on set, a coded phrase for temperamental behavior. Thornton's personal life, often described as stable, was marred by his distant relationship with his daughter, who moved to Canada and rarely spoke of him publicly. He also became increasingly reclusive after the death of his wife, Beryl, with some close friends reporting signs of cognitive decline. Though he avoided headline scandals, several behind-the-scenes staff privately described him as intimidating, particularly toward female assistants. Frank Thornton died on March 16, 2013 at age 92 from natural causes. Stephen Lewis was born on December 17, 1926 and stepped into the role of Clem Smiler Hemingway in 1988 at the age of 62. Smiler, with his mournful gaze and defeated slouch, was a tragicomic presence, mirroring elements of Lewis's off-screen persona. Despite early acclaim for On the Buses, Lewis faced professional collapse in the late 70s after being dropped from multiple projects, allegedly due to unpredictable behavior and tension with directors. His personal life was quietly calamitous. Never married, he was estranged from a long-term partner after a domestic dispute that neighbors claimed turned physical. Rumors of financial mismanagement dogged him for years, worsened by gambling debts and failed investments in fringe theater. He battled depression in private, often seen wandering Soho alone at night, looking lost. Colleagues remembered an actor both brilliant and belligerent, once storming off a rehearsal due to a minor line change. Lewis died on August 12, 2015 at age 88, suffering from Alzheimer's and respiratory failure, in a nursing home with no surviving family at his side. John Comr, born March 1, 1924, originated the role of Sid in 1973 at age 49, playing the dry-witted cafe owner until his death. Sid's gruff warmth hid an underlying sensitivity, much like Comr himself. But off-camera, he was tormented by addiction and grief. Comr struggled with alcohol throughout his career, often drinking heavily before performances and sparking tension with producers. His private life unraveled after the sudden death of his teenage son in a tragic motorcycle crash. The loss devastated him, plunging him into depression and further alcoholism. His marriage suffered deeply, with reports of prolonged silence between him and his wife, only speaking through intermediaries at times. Despite his talent, directors began to avoid casting him due to his unpredictability and volatility on set. Friends said he seemed resigned to early death, chain-smoking and drinking until his voice grew hoarse and body frail. John Comr died on February 11, 1984, aged 59, from throat cancer. Brian Wilde, born June 13, 1927, joined the series in 1976 at age 49 as Walter Foggy Dewhurst, the pompous, ex-military man convinced of his own heroic grandeur. While Wilde was beloved on screen, his real-life persona was marked by reclusiveness and volatile moods. His earlier success in Porridge gave way to a sudden exit from Last of the Summer Wine in 1985 amid rumored creative disputes. Some say he clashed bitterly with writers over how Foggy was portrayed, once threatening to quit mid-season. He returned in 1990, but insiders noted his paranoia had deepened. He reportedly demanded script approval and requested younger castmates be removed from key scenes. Wilde's family life was equally fraught. Though married, he was often absent, retreating to a countryside cottage for weeks without notice. His son, a journalist, later wrote cryptically about growing up with a ghost of a father. Wilde died on March 20, 2008 at age 80 from a fall and subsequent infection, after years of ill health and near-complete withdrawal from public life. Dora Bryan, born on February 7, 1923, joined Last of the Summer Wine as Roz in 2000 at 77 years old. Roz was flamboyant and scatterbrained, a reflection of Bryan's once colorful public persona. But behind her comic charm was a life marred by chaos. Her career in the 1950s soared, but alcoholism and reckless spending led to her downfall. In the 1990s, she was declared bankrupt after a failed attempt to turn her Brighton hotel into a theater venue. Debt collectors, legal battles, and repossession notices followed. Her marriage to cricketer Bill Lawton was turbulent, marked by infidelity and violent arguments. Even her adopted children became estranged. One reportedly disowned her after public drunken outbursts. Neighbors claimed she grew paranoid in her final years, accusing carers of theft and ranting at passers-by. Despite regaining some public affection in her final roles, her decline was sharp and tragic. Dora Bryan died on July 23, 2014, aged 91, from Alzheimer's-related complications. Josephine Tusen, born on February 26, 1931, joined Last of the Summer Wine as Miss Davenport in 2003 at the age of 72. On screen, Miss Davenport was a prim, awkward spinster who longed for companionship but masked her vulnerability behind proper manners. Off-screen, Tusen cultivated a clean image, but behind the stage curtain, her life was marked by deep solitude. Her brief marriage to actor Leonard Rossiter ended abruptly, and friends described her as emotionally walled off and obsessively private. While she avoided overt scandal, whispers within theater circles hinted at her ruthless ambition in her early years, stepping over colleagues and using personal connections to secure stage roles. Despite being adored by audiences, Tusen was known in rehearsal rooms for her cutting remarks and unwillingness to rehearse with younger actors. In later life, she reportedly became reclusive, turning down interviews and estranging herself from many former colleagues. Josephine Tusen died on August 18, 2022 at the age of 91 from natural causes. Bert Kwok, born July 18, 1930, joined the show in 2002 at age 72 as Entwistle, a cheerful oddball with mechanical genius. Best known as Kato in The Pink Panther, Kwok's polished exterior hid decades of painful typecasting and silent resentment. Hollywood offered little more than racial caricatures, a frustration he internalized until explosive private interviews in the 80s, where he allegedly called his career a long, humiliating joke. His marriage was outwardly stable, but colleagues hinted at coldness and long separations. He spent months away from home during shoots, often drinking alone in hotel bars. In the late 2000s, He became known among BBC crews for blunt, sometimes cruel remarks, especially toward women, once telling a young assistant she would never make it because she wasn't pretty enough. In his final years, he was reportedly disillusioned and bitter, lamenting how his talents were wasted on clown work. Bert died on May 24, 2016 at age 85 after a quiet battle with cancer, leaving behind a legacy tainted by artistic disappointment and silent rage. Tom Owen, born April 8, 1949, became Tom Simonite in 1991 at age 42, stepping into the shadow of his real-life father, Bill Owen. The character was mischievous and cheeky, treats Tom mirrored off camera, though less endearingly. Despite initial praise, Tom faced mounting criticism for his uneven performances, leading to whispers that his casting was nepotism in plain sight. His private life was riddled with turbulence. He went through 2 bitter divorces, the first ending after he was accused of emotional abuse and erratic behavior. His relationship with his children was strained, particularly after court records revealed unpaid alimony and legal battles over property. Tom also struggled with addiction, allegedly entering rehab for alcohol misuse in the late 1990s, though this was kept tightly under wraps by his agents. Fellow actors described him as hot-headed, prone to backstage outbursts and bouts of silence that could last for days. Tom Owen died on November 8, 2022 at age 73, reportedly from pancreatic cancer. June Whitfield, born November 11, 1925, appeared as Nellie in 2001 at the age of 76. Nellie was a kindly, no-nonsense woman, reflective of Whitfield's comedic legacy. Yet her off-screen persona was less warm than fans assumed. Though revered for her roles, Whitfield was quietly known in industry circles as fiercely competitive and highly controlling of her public image. Multiple younger actresses reported being snubbed or subtly undermined by her on shared sets. Her marriage to Tim Atchison was publicly steady, but insiders claimed long-standing emotional distance and separate lives, with Tim reportedly relocating to a different wing of their home in later years. After his death, Whitfield became reclusive, and a falling out with her daughter over property management left her increasingly alone. Some in the industry hinted that her grand dame image masked a calculating temperament. June Whitfield died on December 29, 2018, aged 93, from age-related causes. Trevor Bannister, born August 14, 1934, stepped into the role of the ever-suave Toby in 1992 at the age of 58. While Toby was smooth-talking and confident, Bannister's real life was shadowed by betrayal and regret. Known for his racy innuendos in Are You Being Served?, Bannister found himself embroiled in a backstage feud with co-star Molly Sugden that turned violent during a 1978 rehearsal, an incident BBC executives covered up to protect the show's image. Bannister's obsession with staying youthful led him into a string of inappropriate relationships with younger women, one of whom alleged coercion in a suppressed 1986 lawsuit. His marriage crumbled under the weight of these scandals, and he became estranged from his eldest son, who later accused him of emotional neglect. On set, Bannister was infamous for belittling junior actors and sabotaging their scenes, believing himself perpetually overshadowed. He died from a heart attack on April 14, 2011, aged 76, in relative obscurity, having spent his final years fighting lawsuits and fading into tabloid oblivion. Michael Aldridge, born on September 9, 1920, joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1986 as the inventive Seymour at the age of 66. On screen, Seymour was an eccentric dreamer, always lost in his grand schemes. Off-screen, however, Aldridge's polished image hid a life haunted by severe depression and creative jealousy. Though praised for his Shakespearean work, Aldridge's career spiraled in the 1970s after being quietly dropped from several West End productions due to his unpredictable behavior and rumored alcoholism. His marriage was rocky. Close friends confided that his wife had left him for several years due to his mood swings and obsession with work. Estranged from one of his sons, Aldridge buried his grief in a reclusive lifestyle. Colleagues on Last of the Summer Wine noted his increasing paranoia and refusal to rehearse with certain cast members, suspecting them of undermining him. Behind the scenes, whispers of emotional abuse and manipulation followed him from theater to set. He died alone on January 10, 1994 at age 73 from a sudden stroke, having distanced himself from most of his peers. Christopher Beanie, born July 7, 1941, appeared as the affable Morton starting in 2001 at age 60. On screen, Morton charmed audiences with wit and warmth, but Beanie's off-screen life was less cheerful. His early fame and upstairs, downstairs led to a toxic reliance on public validation. After a messy divorce in the 1980s, Beanie lost custody of his children and sank into a depression he kept hidden behind a forced smile. He battled a secret gambling addiction that nearly bankrupted him in the late 90s, quietly borrowing money from castmates and dodging tax inquiries. Though he kept up appearances, behind closed doors he was often bitter, angry, and difficult to direct. Beanie's name appeared in a 2003 tabloid exposé regarding lewd comments made during a theater tour, a scandal quickly buried by his PR team. His final years were spent battling ill health, and he died of cancer on January 3, 2020 at age 78, estranged from one of his sons and forgotten by many of his early peers. Norman Wisdom, born February 4, 1915, joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1995 as the bumbling Billy at the age of 80. Though he was adored for his comedic brilliance, Wisdom's life was a mosaic of tragic irony. A product of extreme poverty, he was abandoned by his mother and spent part of his childhood in a workhouse. This trauma manifested in a lifelong insecurity that drove him to obsessive perfectionism and manipulative behavior on set. Behind the lovable facade was a man who demanded script rewrites, bullied junior crew, and had notorious mood swings. His family life was turbulent. He disowned one of his sons over a business dispute, and his ex-wife accused him of emotional cruelty during their bitter divorce. Wisdom was also banned from several hotels in the 1980s for drunken outbursts. His twilight years were lonely, despite the public affection, and he died from a stroke on October 4, 2010, aged 95, suffering from vascular dementia and reportedly estranged from parts of his family. Who's your favorite character in Last of the Summer Wine? How do you feel knowing that the actors have passed away? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thank you so much.